Nystrom,
Here.
5 of the 6 present.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do you want to Okay, so we will start first of all with approval of our agenda, which has been amended. We've added item number 2, which is a change order PR 22 involving the high school.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Nystrom for approval of our amended agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. Next up will be our public input, again via email and communications at isd181.org. And Corey, if you have any communications, and she is back in the saddle here. Maybe Corey, just before you do start, let me just, if I could interrupt before you get started. I do want to recognize, we have a written comment by Anna Gardner, and thank you, Anna, for submitting your comments. Due to our board policy, which I will read now, obviously we welcome comments, but we also like to remind everyone that we must comply with board policy 206, and the following limitations do apply during tonight's public comment period as in all board meetings, and that is that we'll enforce a 3-minute limit. In this case, I don't think we have to be too concerned, being that we're still via teleconference. However, during the public comment session, complaints or allegations against students or employees may not be discussed due to data privacy. Complaints or allegations must be submitted in writing to Superintendent Larson. And of course, please be advised there'd be no interaction amongst the board. Again, very difficult to do this through telecommunications anyway, but did want to recognize Anna's written comments, but again, being that there's a number of names that are in there, this has been turned over to Superintendent Larson, and then we'll be making a statement here shortly as well, which hopefully will address a number of the comments here. Corey?
We've received another email. It says, "Greetings, esteemed board members. I hope that you are able to support action to clearly state in all district materials that racism and discrimination in all forms is not tolerable and warrants termination or unpaid suspension. I hope that you are able to add a code of conduct to the ISD 181 employee handbook that is publicly accessible and in alignment with the Minnesota Human Rights Act. I also hope that you see fit to the creation of an oversight board that can field internal and external reports of bias and discrimination. Without clearly stating a position against racism and other forms of bias, ISD 181 will swiftly fall behind the times. Absolutely all students deserve a place to learn that honors and respects all aspects of their being. I look forward to further action from the board regarding matters of anti-racism and anti-discrimination. With deep gratitude, Catherine Rose Heisey."
Okay, great. Thank you, Catherine. Any others, Corey?
No.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll close our public comments and ask Superintendent Larson to read a statement that we prepared.
Thank you. Dated June 8th, 2020, RE Letter of Commitment to Equity for All Students at Brainerd Public Schools, ISD 181. Dear Brainerd Public School community, the recent tragic death of George Floyd set in motion a series of events in the Twin Cities and throughout the world that have called attention to the ongoing struggle for liberty and justice for all. This past week has also brought to the forefront the struggle of how to address continued inequity within our own educational system. We cannot accurately say tonight that we at Brainerd Public Schools have all the answers or are doing everything perfectly. Although we are proud of the intentional commitment the school district has made during the past years to address equity in our educational system, there remains additional important work to do and will likely always be evolving. Although we have made progress, we know we can do more. Our students deserve it. Systemic change cannot occur through education alone. However, we embrace the challenge to become part of a greater solution that is needed in our community, region, state, and nation. Brainerd Public Schools is committed to finding continued solutions to improve equity education, to develop ongoing cultural competency, and to meet the needs of historically underserved populations. Every student, staff, or community member has an invaluable place in our education system. As we move forward, Brainerd Public Schools will develop a comprehensive district plan that includes the systemic solutions necessary to combat discrimination and oppression. We will do this through the following initiatives. Brainerd Public Schools will complete a thorough review of district policies, procedures, and handbook expectations to ensure equity for all. We will convene a multidisciplinary advisory task force, including representatives who are skilled in cultural competency and racial equality, to bring forth prioritized recommendations for board consideration. We will ensure culturally relevant curriculum offerings align with the Minnesota standards and best practice instruction. We will provide additional professional development for all district representatives to increase awareness and a deeper understanding. We will adhere to our professional responsibility to report misconduct, harassment, and bullying. And finally, we will cultivate a school culture in which brave work, tough conversations, and whole hearts are the expectation to ensure that each child feels safe, accepted, heard, and included. At Brainerd Public Schools, we are committed to creating an even brighter, safer, and more just future for all. What has happened in the last few weeks underscores the important work our teachers and staff complete on behalf of our students and our community every day. The district is committed to taking action now and in the future and inspiring the change that is needed. We look forward to partnering with Central Lakes College, our neighboring school districts, our community, regional partners, and state and federal professional associations to be the systemic change we need to see in our world. Together, we will pursue educational excellence while building a safe and equitable learning environment and an inclusive future for all. Our students, our future, are counting on us. Sincerely, the Board of Education of Brainerd Public Schools, Thomas Hagelin, Board Chair, Lane Larson, Superintendent, and Heidi Hahn, Assistant Superintendent.
Okay, thank you, Lane.
Tom, it's important for me to, if I could just share a quick comment as a parent, but also as a parent of American Indian children of color in this community. When I was a boy, I grew up in a small community. We were the only American Indian family in that community. And I was the youngest of 3 children. I have an older brother, sister, and then myself. And as a child, I was raised with an amazing ring of protection as that youngest sibling. Things didn't simply happen to me without it getting past my brother or my sister. Heaven forbid it got to my sister's level. And it's an amazing experience living life as a child in an environment where you know that there was absolute protection, absolute safety from things that were not safe. And it was an amazing opportunity to grow up in an environment where that accountability wasn't something that was discreet, it wasn't something that was covert, but it was something that was clear, it was quick, it was decisive, And it was very, very, accountable and very, very absolute. And that's a fantastic way to grow up. For our children in this community, for my children, I feel strongly that we have to provide that same opportunity for those children, underrepresented, be it children of color, be it children of a different background or of a different religious choice. We need to make sure that whatever we do moving forward, that it is absolute, that it is not discreet, it is not simply covert, but that it is absolute, and that it is, all comes down to accountability. Finally, if we're going to want a culturally competent workforce, if we're going to want a culturally competent student body, it's not going to come easy. This is something that we have to fight for as a school board, as administration and faculty. This is something that we have to work hard for. And I challenge us, just like this wonderful letter that Lane wrote, put together for us, but we can't let it end here. And finally, we can't be surprised by simple hatred. We can't be surprised by ignorance. We need to be proactive, and we need to be absolute in terms of how we handle it. Finally, we need to be able to go out and provide a voice to those individual students that might be in a classroom, that might be in a small group, that are hearing some things that are hurtful, hateful, and whatnot. It should not take this type of environment or this type of situation for us to hear it. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
Thank you, Charles.
Could I add? I want to thank Director Blacklance and his comments. They're spot on. Many of you know, just like Director Higlin and Director Kern, we were born in Brainerd. We've lived our entire lives here. I'm 63 years old, and I finally understand that I was born into white privilege in a community that I didn't think fostered any kind of racial hatred, but it was always under the surface. The childhood that I knew here, we didn't really have minorities. We had indigenous people because we're close to Mille Lacs, and I would come in contact with indigenous people, but we were a Scandinavian community, and we were ignorant in the respect of how we treat minorities, and especially black people and indigenous people. And when I say that I have white privilege, I just want you to know, I grew up in a house 3 blocks from here, 1,200 square feet, 25-foot storefront, or house front, I'm sorry. And I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. But it was all white kids. It wasn't, we didn't have black kids around just because there weren't a lot of those people that lived up here. And here I am, and I've seen the racial hatred in this country, whether it is indigenous people that have been mistreated, or if it's been black people that have been mistreated. And what happened to George Floyd is disgusting. The fact that he had a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds for passing a $20 counterfeit bill, and it took 4 officers and he did not resist arrest, and that happened to him? Disgusting. If me, as a white person, passed a $20 counterfeit bill, I'm sure the police would come. Who knows, maybe Corky McQuiston would come. And Corky would say, "What the hell are you doing, Bob? You can't do this." And probably just let me go. This man lost his life over a $20 counterfeit bill, and he didn't resist arrest. And 3 other police officers.
Mr. Nystrom, I do want to kind of adhere to our 3 minutes.
Oh, I'm
You
sorry.
might be able to wrap it up, that would be great.
Okay.
I appreciate your
Well,
comments.
anyway, 3 other officers stood by and watched this poor man be killed, basically. And, well, not basically, he was murdered. And we have to do something different. It is not enough that the teacher that recently resigned, we have to do more. Just like Director Blackland said, we have to do more, and you addressed it in your letter, Superintendent Larson, so I'm very happy for that.
Good, good. Yeah, thank you, Director Nystrom and Director Blacklands, for your comments. There's a lot of, there are policies that are here. We're committed to reviewing. We're committed to all the statements that were read. This won't, it won't die in our minutes. It'll continue to be worked on hard and brought up frequently so we can see our progress made here. So thank you both for your comments.
Can I add one more thing? And thank you for your comments, too. I agree. I grew up in Hopkins, but it was basically a white community, too, and lower middle class. But I feel much the same way as you do. And because of that, one of the things I want to make sure that we as a board do is that we are involved in any cultural competency training that we have. We need to be a part of that because that we're the leaders of the district, and so please make sure that we're involved in any kind of training that we can be.
And thank you for bringing that up, because I did, I worded it that way for that reason, that provide additional professional development for all district representatives to increase awareness and a deeper understanding. And that's anyone who's invited, our volunteers, everyone who works with our children and has that responsibility. So thank you for sharing that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we will move into our presentations. Next up will be our Baxter Community and Summer Facilities Waiver. Corey and Charlie are going to speak to us on that.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for allowing Corey and I to get in front of you a little bit. And as you know, we've had an interesting spring extending into the summer. And we're here to talk a little bit about this idea of opening our facilities back up for use over the summer months in a little bit different fashion than maybe we left them back in March. And in that process, it's important to know just a little bit of background about why I'm here as a high school activities director and the role that our high school coaches play in that return to facility use. The High School League is very clear. They create bylaws to make sure that there's equity and fairness in all of the High School League activities. We are a member of the Minnesota State High School League, and therefore we're bound by these rules. And there are start dates to a season, and there's a last date of the state tournament, and that is the season. And the High School League says you can coach during that season, but you aren't allowed to coach outside of it. And they make an exception for the summer. They say, coaches, if you sign this waiver, you can work independently with your student athletes basically in the months of June and July. And coaches have been on their own for that. What that waiver states, risk management is very important. They are saying, I'm not acting as an agent of the school, and I'm not acting as an agent of the Minnesota State High School League. Now, in order to protect our district, our coaches, and our kids, our student athletes, we've typically used community education as the vehicle to work with our kids in the summertime. Our different coaches will do that. And also the High School League is trying to provide some level of guidance, but they will be the first to tell you that they're taking the marching orders from the governor and the Department of Health, just like we are. And so there are no recommendations coming from the High School League that aren't in step with what's coming from the governor and the Department of Health. And so we're trying to figure out what that means as we come back. And it's really an interesting conversation. And the High School League, although we want more guidance, we maybe want them to be a little more helpful in that, they're kicking, hitting the ball back in our court and saying, we cannot decide how you are going to use your facilities. That's for you to decide. And so that's what Corey and I have essentially worked on, utilizing Department of Education, MDH, and CDC guidelines in a manner to get as many kids as we can back to our campus and connected to our adults in the safest way that we know how, given the information we have today. And ironically, the work Corey and I did in preparation for this, it changed on Friday afternoon. Just a little bit, but it did change. And so that's the one thing that we know. We're here today, but we are staying abreast of what the latest happenings are. And we're trying to make sure that our plan moving forward contains that. Corey?
Yeah, just to clarify, Charlie talked about the varsity coaches working with their varsity athletes as one of our groups that accesses and uses the facilities a lot during the summer. He also mentioned that many of those varsity coaches run camps and clinics for athletes of all ages through community ed, so kind of a subset of that. We also have other instructors running camps, clinics, and classes through community ed. We have renters who submit requests. We're going to ask them also to submit a safety plan for various facilities. And then, of course, Baxter Park and Rec uses mostly their own City of Baxter facilities, but there is some usage of ours. So as we reviewed the guidelines, and our own what makes sense here, we felt like there was kind of a difference between indoor facilities and activities and outdoor facilities and activities. So it's been determined that July 1st will be the date when we will begin allowing usage of our outdoor activities. We'll follow the guidelines in that anything that can be outside should be outside, will be outside. We're asking the coaches and instructors to put together a safety plan that is laid out in the guidelines from the Department of Health, a health screening, small group sizes of one. What changed was it was 9 on Thursday, and by Friday it was up to 24. So 24 students with one staff person. What's interesting about this is there are also a number, they call each of these groups a pod, and there's a restriction on the number of pods on each field, and really, though group size went up, the pod size shrank. So it's sort of a wash. You can have about 50 kids on something the size of like a baseball field, for instance.
Correct.
We want to see the coach's plan for sanitizing equipment, and then the big one is skill building only. There'd be no games, and the state is asking us coaches to limit any contact between players as much as possible. In light of these guidelines, some of our coaches have determined that they just simply can't run under those guidelines and have canceled already, which is unfortunate, but we understand that sometimes it just doesn't work.
Sure. Excuse me. Indoor activities are allowed with this kind of latest update to the health plans. The group sizes have maintained at 10, so presumably one instructor to 9 participants. The same general guidelines would apply. There would be health screening based on the size of the gym or the court that you're using. That would restrict the number of people. You'd be responsible for sanitizing equipment, focusing on skill building and no games. One other clarification, I guess you might call it, is this round of Department of Health updates also categorize sports as low risk, medium risk, and high risk, and really put the bulk of our activities that we offer into one of those, and said, okay, low risk activities are these, and this is what we're allowing or is allowable, and could be practiced safely. Medium and high risk, this is going to be skill building. We're not going to play any games yet. So Corey and I were in a panic Friday afternoon. Okay, new information, and by the time we were able to get through it by this afternoon when we connected again, we realized there really wasn't a lot that had changed, but there was some clarity, and that's always good when you're dealing with a variety of people, a variety of types of programs, so it did offer us a little bit of help, and quite honestly, most of the high school coaching staff is really excited just to do something. Even if they have to modify the instruction and the activity, they're just excited to be able to safely connect with kids and bring kids together to create memories, but also to enhance their skills and abilities. But it's been a long time, and we all miss that contact.
One other note about the indoor facilities, we're being very careful about scheduling things where there is no construction. So that will primarily be at Forest View, maybe the lower site at the high school. But we're really working to keep everyone out of anywhere that's under construction. Certainly the high school, there's no life safety and fire protection, so it's uninhabitable right now. So we will not be scheduling that. We're working with coaches to get them moved around as needed.
And we certainly welcome any questions, too, from board members at this point, if you have them.
I have one. You mentioned the July 1st for using our facilities, but we do have some stuff starting June 15th, correct?
We do. This is where the high school league, things get a little bit weird. So this year, because schools asked, the Minnesota State High School, the schools said, we need a little time to process this and figure this out. Please push that start date back from June 1 to June 15. Now, the rule only applies to coaches working with high school kids, right? So if we would allow it, we could have people on our facilities at any time if they were young and not in the high school program. But for high school aged kids, essentially the league moved that date to June 15th. We, Brainerd Public Schools, are going a step further to say June 15th is great, and if you have someplace off-site that you can connect with those kids and use that, that's great. We're not going to get in your way or stand in your way with that. However, our open date is going to be July 1, and we feel that that gives us kind of adequate time. You do remember Corey's office is not staffed right now, so the scheduling becomes kind of a shared burden with us in the interim and in the meantime. And we're doing that because we feel like that's what we ought to do to get our kids back safely and participating. So there's a few layers to that, but you are correct.
Then my other question, since most of the indoor stuff will be done at Forest View in that gym, you said it's 10 people to a group. So that's one big area, but can you divide it up into the courts?
Yes, it is determined by the court size. If you're on a volleyball court, this is the number of kids. If you're on so we would look at each court and possibly being able to have multiple groups in that facility, so long as we don't exceed the maximum recommendations.
Thank you.
This screen flipped once about Baxter Rec. Is that part of this presentation or?
Just minimally, as Charlie alluded, this information came out on Friday. At Friday at like 11 a.m., I thought I knew exactly what I was going to say to you, and by 2, I did not. So I'm working with the city now to kind of process through. We have until this Wednesday to make a final determination, because if we backwards plan from the adoption of the July 1st budget that the school board and the city council has to do, we basically have till Wednesday to figure out a budget, and certainly any programming we ran or did not run in the summer will impact that budget. So it's a non-answer at this point. We're not sure yet. We're still working through it, and I plan to be back here at your next meeting to present that budget and to share what direction we ultimately end up going. I will just let you know that at this point, the guidelines seem very difficult for us to manage in Parks and Rec. So, just put that out.
Okay, thank you both. Any other questions for HR? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So next, Charlie, did you have more that you wanted to share or add?
No, I'm just coordinating with Corey, so
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm trying not to do that publicly.
Well, that's fine. Great, thank you. Next up, I think Corey, and I don't know if Angie's joining regarding the COVID-19 summer safety protocol. Here comes Angie. That was the coordination with Charlie then.
Exactly.
Hello.
Hello.
Good to see you all. It piggybacks on kind of the conversation that was just begun with Charlie and Corey, but as things begin opening up, stay-at-home orders lifted, businesses are starting to open up. We have Fun and Friends going for the summer program. We really thought it was important to have some type of written protocol to create safety for both employees and our students as people are back on site. And so it really started, I think, with the protocol that Corey and the nurses developed for our emergency childcare. That was kind of our foundation because we did already have a lot of these systems in place, but really just to kind of expand it so it would apply across the district. So I'm just going to kind of go over the main bullet points. If you have any questions, we're certainly happy to answer those as well. So the health screenings, Charlie mentioned it just now as well, but there are health screenings that are recommended and I think required even on the child care front for both staff and the students of the district that come on site. So we will continue to work with those. Really, the document says, if you feel ill, stay home. That's the same message that's been throughout this whole pandemic, that if people are feeling under the weather, really, we want them to stay home. We've determined the fever, 100.4, is kind of the line we're going to continue using. And then we also outlined the symptoms of COVID-19, so it's very clear to everybody, what those symptoms are. So if they are experiencing some of those, we can have a conversation about that. All students and staff will have a health screening before coming on site to childcare. In the district, we have a district nurse as a point of contact for any COVID-19 related questions or symptoms that we kind of go through, because they're very well connected to MDH and CDC about protocols and kind of how to work through these situations. And we have been doing that now for quite some time, and it's worked well. On-site safety measures, things that you're already aware of: social distancing, personal protective equipment, cleaning and disinfecting all the areas. We are making masks available to all the staff that request them. It is a requirement beginning today for all child care staff to be wearing masks while working with the children. At this point, we're not requiring it for anyone else unless you're in a group setting and cannot maintain social distancing, but it's more of an optional resource for individuals at this point. Access to district facilities, Corey and Charlie kind of talked a little bit about that. The other structural buildings within our district are going to be closed to the public until at least August of 2020. And there will be some exceptions to this, but it's going to be kind of a case-by-case basis. If there is a need for somebody to be on site, we will have kind of a protocol on how they can request that visit, what things we're deeming as important enough for people to come inside, but really just still continuing to try and protect the grounds as much as we can. And then a frequently asked questions, kind of a started document. As things come up, we'll probably add to that. This will be made available on our website on the COVID-19 webpage. We'll also have it posted in all of our buildings. And likely, I think we'll share updates with staff, especially if the FAQs kind of continue to expand. We'll keep everybody abreast of those. So, any questions about that? Anything I missed?
All right, great, thank you. Any questions from the board? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is approval of our board meeting minutes from May 27th.
I would so move the approval of the regular school board meeting minutes from May 27th.
Second?
Thank you. Motion by Director Kern, second by Director Blacklands for approval of our board meeting minutes of May 27th. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is approval of our consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Director Nystrom, second by Director Nelson for approval of the consent agenda. Any discussion?
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
We're really excited. If you know, a couple of weeks ago, we had a couple of different rounds of interviews for principals, as we are looking for a principal at Garrison Elementary School and Riverside Elementary School. And I have to thank our staff again for coming out and helping in that process to find the perfect match for each of our buildings. And I'm really excited tonight to welcome both Dr. Sheila Eller, who will be the principal at Riverside Elementary School. She comes to us from Mounds View Middle School right now, but she has been at a number of schools, turnaround schools at Mounds View Elementary School, and so she just brings a wealth of knowledge to the Riverside project. And we're also very excited, Jim Connor is coming to us from Melrose, and he is going to be leading the charge at Harrison Elementary School. Both of these people are absolutely thrilled to be coming to Brainerd and to be part of the team here. They are both coming to the leadership retreat on the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th to begin that process of collaborating with their teammates. And so I want to take this time today to congratulate two extraordinary practitioners who are going to be joining our team July 1.
Wonderful, thank you for sharing.
That's
Very
great.
nice. Yeah. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. We'll begin our 4 action items. First up will be our ICS group with building project updates.
Hello.
Hi, Damian.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Here, I'll share my screen here. All right. And everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, so this is our bond improvements update for June 8th, 2020. We're going to be reviewing project updates. High school change event number 43 for the kitchen gypsum / FRP. New Baxter playground proposal, the Garfield steel erection proposal, and then there'll be an FF&E update with Lindsay Prince from Woodside. So with that, Scott Whitmore, if you'd like to jump in and give us an update on the high school.
You bet. Project update here. So after a long-awaited ship date, we got carpet coming in. It's actually in. You can see in that lower right-hand picture there. It's being installed in the upper level area 1 through 3, and actually they're done in the upper level areas 1 through 3. Carpet's in. We got the hallways out yet, but those rooms are essentially complete at this point. We've moved down to the lower level. We are wrapping up our carpeting. I shouldn't say wrapping up, but we're starting the carpet install in all those lower levels. I was walking through today. They were doing kind of some of the floor leveling, getting everything prepped, ready to go. Areas 1 and 3 there are looking really, really good. If you drove by the building lately, you'll see bricks wrapped around, coming around the front side now. We got metal wall panels that's going to be installed in the exterior of the building. The north addition is really coming together nicely. We're going to keep continuing on with our finishes while chasing the rooms, working around through area 2. We did get into the auditorium today and started some interior footings are getting formed up and ready to pour. So the auditorium is going to be taking shape here as we move forward as well. I have major demo complete down there because I filled this out last week, Thursday. So wishful thinking on my end to be complete with the B building demo, but they're just knocking down the last wall today, so that's going pretty well. As far as remodeled spaces, in D-Wing, we are sheetrock's on, we're getting ready for paint. Once we get painted, we'll get grid going in there. The H-Link is essentially framed out, ready to go. They were just wrapping up a couple of mudding a couple soffits today, but everything's going really well. Area 5 and 6, we hit a little bit of a structural steel predicament, but we're getting a solution worked out for that. So you'll see that coming to project oversight here in the next week about how we get that fixed. We had some steel that was just a little bit too tall in one of the areas, and we've had the engineers and architects look at it, and we've got a solution identified to keep moving forward. So also on here is kitchen tile change review. So as this is an older building and we're getting into the remodel as we get these areas opened up, we start finding things that maybe weren't identified in the plans, or could, since we're in there now, we could fix it, because now's the time to do it. And one of those things is this kitchen tile. The existing yellow tile that's on the wall, and I would guess is probably original to the kitchen. As we pulled the equipment away, large swaths of it were falling off of the walls. As a way to kind of save costs early on in the planning, we were just going to cut and patch as necessary to facilitate the installation of the new equipment. We quickly discovered that was, while we could still do that, the extent is much greater. I mean, there's entire walls of tile that have fallen. Literally, you touch it and it falls off the wall. So this change event 43 is to replace that ceiling or wall tile, I should say, with FRP and gypsum. And that sum is $59,238.11. You have any questions? I know I kind of went through a lot there.
Scott, can you talk a little bit on PR 22?
The amendment, which
Yep,
you
so
added
PR
today.
22. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say again? I couldn't hear anybody there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Scott, I just added the amendment that we added to the agenda today. I know we've talked about it at Project Oversight and one time at the school board, but it just got added to the agenda today. So can you give the board a detailed overview of the jack and bore at the Mindoli Plumbing?
Yes, ma'am. So, one of the things that came up during the Mindoli Plumbing Plan Review was that we had to figure out how to get 3 16-inch pipes underneath the G-Link. With the help of WSN or WITSEF, we were able to identify a solution in which we combine that all into one pipe and go under G-Link with a technique called jack and bore. We've done geological surveys. We've done downscamming or ground penetrating radar, and we feel that we have a plan with a very high probability of success to go in there and jack and bore underneath that. So this was separated out from the rest of the Mindoli comments that was approved a couple months back. And we don't have the finalized pricing yet, but I've got a pretty good indication where it's going to be. And it's at $336,806, in which $3,650 is just plumbing the piping down there. We've got some chemical shoring that has to happen in order to make sure that the building stays up to the tune of approximately $20,000. We've got $4,500 in sidewalk repairs when we tear up, I shouldn't say tear up, when we replace the utilities on the exterior of the building. $26,600 and some change going tree removals, digging the pits, and then tying into the new utilities on the exterior G-Link. That was excavation removals, removing the sidewalk, digging the pit, and then filling it back in. $12,000 for utilities, and then $270,000 for the actual jacking and boring, and then grouting that sleeve full once RJ gets their pipe through. For a grand total of $336,806. But again, this is a not to exceed amount, and we don't have the finalized pricing in yet, but we're hoping we can come down on that number.
Thank you.
And I believe we've known about this expense for quite a while, so it's been in our financial numbers.
Yep, we're preparing for it. It will come out of our contingency, but we have been preparing for it because we found out many months ago that we had to do something, and thank you for taking care of it. We had talked today about waiting till the next board meeting, now that they were getting the numbers, and they felt that if we waited a couple of weeks, that it actually had the potential of not having us ready to open in August or September. And so I said, let's bring it, but let's give a really detailed overview and a reminder of the conversations that we've had. And so that's why we did add it to the agenda this evening.
Okay, good. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. Any other questions regarding the high school, North Campus?
Exciting.
Can you give us an
Excellent.
update? Yep.
Yep, South Campus. So we did present at Oversight last week, Tuesday, kind of how things are shaking out from a programming perspective. We are working towards getting our SDs completed towards the end of June here. Our next core group meeting is June 16th. And I could say being involved, we've got a very, very involved core planning group on this project, and there's a lot of good ideas. And the slide on the presentation there is kind of how it's shaken out from the last round of core planning group sessions. If you have any questions on that.
Okay.
Hearing none, that wraps it up for me.
Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
Next, we're going to have Justin Moninga join us and talk about New Baxter.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Great. New Baxter Elementary, we are full-fledged in the finishes basically throughout the building. You can see on the top right there, casework, that's the admin desk, polishing terrazzo, actually all curbing gutter has been installed to date. So really grading and finalizing the site work. Kitchen / cafeteria equipment that's nearing completion. Exterior wise, you drive out there, you can see majority of the metal panels are up. Brick is all complete, and it's really nearing completion as well. Gymnasium number 2, that's tracking along nicely. The precast is up. The roof, the trusses are in. The prep work for the roof is in, and the roofer's actually mobilized today to start roofing that. Not to be complete with the rest of the project, but it's not going to lag too far behind. So that's tracking real well. Substantial completion is July 31st, and we're right there. It's coming along real nicely. So happy with us. The last bullet I do have the equipment for board action. In the board book, you should have the quote from Northwoods. Actually, includes 3 quotes: a material install quote, or a material quote, an install quote, then a third quote to replace all the plant for a grand total of $50,775.80. That's well within our budget. And a few bonus to this is we're repurposing existing equipment for elementary. We are adding one piece, but really we're repurposing it and really conforming to the overall budget. So any questions?
Any questions for Justin? Okay, thank you.
Niskwa Elementary. This is tracking very well as well. Obviously, we got in there a little bit early. Demolition is fully complete as we speak here. You'll see metal panels at the admin entrance on the west side. Now that demo is complete, we're framing with mechanical, electrical, plumbing rough-ins following behind. So really, we are putting everything back together now, and we're back very nice. Any questions for this one?
When will that building be ready?
The substantial completion date is August 14th.
And that means staff can come in? That'll mean we have all our permits and everything?
That'll mean we'll have our certificate of occupancy. Keep in mind, we could utilize that facility for its intended purpose for sure, but we will be in there, wrapping up some punch list stuff for several weeks after. Be some final cleaning going on after the 15th, but yeah, the substantial completion is the 14th and can be used for its intended purpose.
Awesome, good, thank you.
Warrior Early Center, a lot has changed from the last board meeting. The contracts have been sent out, they've been executed. We're nearing completion of the permitting process. We're working with the city of Baxter. That's going very well. And of course, we're doing submittals, trying to get a head start on some of the stuff, and just trying to get our ducks in a row to start in September.
Okay, very good.
All right, thanks, Justin.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Kyle Walter, he's gonna join us and talk about Garrison Elementary.
Good evening, everybody. Go over a quick update for Harrison. We have the existing building demo is nearing completion. Actually looking on Wednesday to start pouring in some of the concrete infill that was approved at the last board meeting. Interior structural steel is being installed. The top left picture you see there is the old staircase on the north-hand side of the building. That staircase will be infilled with steel and concrete poured to create a new floor there. The remaining kitchen core tile was installed, and then we have on the new side just some interior finishes, including painting and ceramic tile and acoustical ceiling grid going in a couple different places, as well as site work happening. So anybody that went by the bus drop-off area has its first base course down, along with some curb, and you saw some sidewalks. And then we've been working on the south side where there's a pond and some for this staff parking, getting all that graded as well. So a lot of stuff happening on that the existing building side, and should be starting to put that together here in the coming weeks. So I'm excited for the progress we've had for demo, especially for there. So, and then yeah, I think that covers Harrison. There's no questions. And then moving on to Garfield, still doing some submittal reviews as we go. Interior demo is ongoing, as well as the asbestos abatement in the building should be wrapping up hopefully this week, and we'll continue interior demo on that end of the building. We've started exterior site prep and excavations in order to start our footings and foundations for our additions, starting with the kindergarten addition, moving on to our special ed addition, and then ending with our first grade addition. And then there's some underground plumbing and some other rough ends that have started in the Garfield project. And then on the agenda tonight, we're bringing for approval the proposal for structural steel installation. During the bid process, the work scope we had for the steel installation, this is installation only, we did not end up receiving bids on that day for that work scope. So what we did is we reached out to Barato Brothers, who was contracted for the general construction package for Garfield Elementary, for them to provide us a price for structural steel install. That's the price you see in front of you tonight. We did check this with another contractor just to make sure the pricing we had is fair. This amount will not be coming on contingency. This is a budget amount we had set aside originally for this project. So this is just getting somebody to install the structural steel that we intended on having somebody at bid day, but did not. Any questions?
Sounds good, Kyle, thank you.
Yeah, I was on Garfield this afternoon, just in time to receive a free ice cream treat from Jody. It was great. I will tell you, construction is running hot today. We are looking forward to a cool down, but a lot of great progress. You know, we had probably about 25 workers on site today, and it was nice to see things moving forward. So excited about that. Lowell Elementary, the classroom tower foundation system is complete. Parking lot demo has been completed. We're installing the classroom tower, drain tile and foundation, waterproofing and then insulation, installing underground sanitary system, and then we're going to be working on structural steel columns. Good progress on site. Again, lots changed in a week, and good crew size again on site. So everybody's everybody's ready for summer and everybody's getting after construction here. So if you don't stop by the sites, you're going to miss a lot. It's going to change fast. Any questions on Lowell?
Do we have any update on that house, the progress of that, selling that house? No?
Can everybody hear me? This is Reed.
Oh.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Hi. Sorry, I'm at a cabin in northern Minnesota here, so my connection is sketchy. I apologize, but I'm working with. So I talked to Mark Needham, and we're working with Marcy Lord and John Edison to create our posting for this house. Since we originally talked about it, I've had about 5 people inquire about this property, so I'm excited for it. We're working that through, and we're going to get that thing posted and get it for sale and see what kind of results we get back.
Great.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Riverside Elementary, chimney demo is completed. AST room and staff lounge excavations and footings are complete. 4th grade finishes demo is completed. Entry canopy demo is completed. We're working on the existing gym electrical. We're starting the 4th grade painting. We're going to be starting the fuel tank removal this week, and upcoming work to include multi-purpose room foundation and utilities. I was on the site with Mark on Thursday. Site is really looking great. We did have our safety consultant on site as well, just to look things over. But a lot of great progress. We're way ahead of the game there. So it'll be fun to get the finishes put back together inside the school and see some good progress on the exterior. Any questions on Riverside?
No?
Okay. All right, so that leaves to questions, and then we have Lindsay on the line to do a quick review of FF&E with us.
Hi, Lindsay.
Lindsay, are you there?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
You can. I'm going to stop
Wonderful.
sharing.
I will try to share my screen. So tonight for you, we have kind of a fun presentation. Mike England, the architect from Woodstaff, was on site, or has been on site frequently over the last several weeks, and took some really nice pictures of the construction site for you. And so what we did, we've updated our interior rendering with all the finishes, all the wall graphics, the new set of logos, and the furniture to these renderings. And so we have pictures of what the construction site looks like maybe a couple weeks ago, and then we paired them with what it will look like in just a few short weeks at the end of the summer. So this image is standing in what was the existing courtyard, looking towards the old main entrance. You can kind of see these sloped arches. If you remember, that's right where the front doors of the school is. So in just a few short months, this is what it will look like here. So we're in the connection link between the cafeteria and the main commons area up by the front doors. To our right are the new CTE classrooms, and to the left is the smaller exterior courtyard. So this link is brand new. It's going to be lined with glass walls. We're looking at some display opportunities with the visual arts department. We'll be meeting with them later on this week to finalize some ideas there. So it's a really great view of a space that currently does not exist, which will exist really soon. The next image is kind of still in this courtyard space. You can see on the ground there's kind of this lighter concrete. That's where the old connecting hallway was, right in front of the main entrance, and also the, I believe it was the counseling office was here. So that has been removed. The structural steel is being set up above. And again, just to orientate yourself in the space, these angled walls that you see over to the right, that's the old main entrance. So here's what it will look like, again, in a few short weeks. So this is the main commons area. The first thing that's really going to welcome you into the new building. So we have really high ceilings here, lots of clear story windows. If you remember, we're utilizing as much natural daylighting in the space as we possibly can. We've got really great graphics to the left-hand side. We've got the Student Success Center and then our large meeting room. Lots of flexible furniture for the commons area. We've got some high seating with power options. We've got some low seating, interactive pieces. Really going to be a show-stopping space. The next image is just kind of looking back over to the right-hand side, so we're still in the main commons area. Right now you can see that exterior wall of what was the old school. So that's coming out. And here's the new interior wall, which will have the glass storefront system, which will allow us to look into the CTE classrooms. What we've also done here is add a little bit of visual privacy into these rooms. There was some concern over a fishbowl effect in those classroom spaces, with this kind of being one of the main circulation paths through the building. So by adding this window film, you add just a little bit of privacy to those rooms. You can't necessarily see who's in there, but you can see what's happening in there, that there's people in there and education is taking place. Kind of far back on the screen in the center, this is a really nice feature wall. This is just adjacent to the main entrance doors. This is going to be a very large 4-screen array. So this is going to be a very large digital display. It's going to be a wonderful opportunity to greet your visitors into the building, display announcements, great hockey games, all those fun things that we can gather in this wonderful commons area and view on that digital display. Kind of a nice overall view here. Again, you can see a wide variety of different types of seating options. We've got a built-in sculptural piece. We've got stools, soft seating, upholstered pieces, really flexible, really durable and cleanable as well. That's something that we're really focusing on for the fall, is surfaces that are very easily sanitized daily that will continue to maintain a healthy environment. We're going to spin around a little bit. So this is our view right as we come in the main entrance doors of the high school. This is kind of a different view of the commons area. And then again, this logo wall, really leaning on the Brainerd helmet as the face of the school district as far as a logo for the schools and for athletics. So that will be displayed really nicely here along this built-in cold bench area. And then back over here to the left-hand side, you'll see that those CTE classrooms again. Kind of another view of the same space. We were talking about this wall, this high wall up above, far back on the screen, as a really great opportunity to welcome you to Brainerd. So something like Welcome to Brainerd, Home of the Warriors, could potentially be located along that surface. So deeper back into the space, this is what I'm calling as the food court area. So far center on your screen, we'll see the concession stand window and the food court, or I'm sorry, the popcorn window into the student store. Over to the far right would be the athletic area, so the pool, the gymnasium, and then far over to our left would be the existing cafeteria space. So this is really at the heart of the building. This is going to be a main cross path. We added lots of different types of seating to accommodate all different ages, different groups, different size people. We're bringing in as much of the existing tables as we can to make the space function appropriately. A lot of booths. We know that students are really drawn to booths, so that was one thing Andrea really commented on. The bigger the booth, the better, because we're going to have a lot of kids sitting in those booths. So we did nice 6-person booths. And then you can see far back, we've got lots of different variations of heighting, some tall seating, some low seating, some accessible seating locations to make this space really accommodating for all different ages and all different abilities. You'll start to see some of the tabletops. We also brought in a branding opportunity with the Brainerd Warrior logo, helmet logo, and as I scroll through here just a little bit more, you'll see we brought in the flag, kind of the banner design, so the Brainerd B with the innovation, the opportunity, and the success right on the tabletops of this space. So bringing in a lot of the personality and the characteristics of the Warrior brand and the Brainerd Public School identity. So those are just some of the pieces we've been working on. I hope you enjoyed these images. it'll be fun to see what that space looks like now. And then again, just in a very few short weeks, what it's going to look like very rapidly.
What a great job you're
Awesome.
doing, Lindsay. What talent you and your team have. That is beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's you hit the nail on the head there. It's definitely a team approach. There's a whole army of people back at WITSEF that work really hard in producing these wonderful graphics, and it's wonderful to work with them.
All right, anything else from the team? Any questions from the
No, I
board?
think that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
So we will move right into item number 2, which is approval of change order PR number 22, which is the jack and board for the high school, as discussed earlier.
Also move the approval of the jack and board not to exceed $336,806 as presented.
Second.
Motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Blacklands for approval as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 3 is approval of change order PR number 1, which is the structural steel installation for Garfield as presented.
I would so move to approve the structural steel PR1 for Garfield, not to exceed $206,465 as presented.
Second.
Motion by Director Kern, second by Director Nystrom for approval of PR number 1 as presented. Any discussion? Not? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 4 is approval of Northwoods Playgrounds Midwest Playscapes proposal as presented for the new Baxter Elementary School.
I'll move approval of the playgrounds for Baxter Elementary not to exceed $50,775.80 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Blackland for approval of the Northwoods Playground as presented. Any discussion? Not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 5 is approval of change order PR number 43, which involves the Brainerd High School kitchen as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second came from Director Kern?
Yeah.
Okay. Motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Kern for approval of change order PR number 43 as presented. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 6 is approval of safety card access proposals. I don't know, Reed, are you still on? Anything to present here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
I got a few slides to talk through this with everybody. Let's see here. Okay. All right, so I just wanted to get in front of everybody here and give you an update, follow up to our conversation at Project Oversight Team. So as part of the referendum project, the school district is responsible for installing our own card access system. I have been in conversation with our district technology department. Ryan Schultz and myself have had a lot of conversation on this, and we have come up with what we think our future solution is going to look like here. So I'll go through this a little bit with you. So, one of our main objectives, obviously, is to create the most safe and secure buildings possible. We want to control access to these buildings. We're purposely in our design, we've created this supervised entrance, this fishbowl, and we're also trying to reduce the number of keys that are out there. I know this is a major problem with athletics. It's a major problem at the high school for getting people in and out of the facility. And then we're also going to be adding cameras to these projects, but cameras are not part of this proposal that's in front of you here today. So that's some of our key objectives that we're looking at with this project. So our current system is a 3X logic system. It's an IP-based door control system, so it's computer-based on our network. It is limited in what we can do to customize it and the amount of zones we can create. And it does not tie in with Active Directory, and so Active Directory is our computer identity, our computer username system. That way, if we have somebody that leaves employment with the district, IT can shut the Active Directory off, and it immediately removes their computer access. Our current system does not tie to that. So the benefit of that will be if we have staff in the future that do leave employment, and the system is Active Directory available. When we terminate employment or end employment, then that person's card will just be shut off, and we don't have to worry about getting keys back from people. So the new system that we're proposing is an Avigilon system, and if you recall, at Forest View, we added about 70 cameras at Forest View that are an Avigilon camera system. So this is going to be adding on to that type of platform. Again, not the camera system, but the card access. So Avigilon provides two systems. They do physical door security and camera security. So that's the nice part about this, is that we'll be able to coordinate and tie those two systems together to allow us to do video door granting, access to the buildings through the front door a lot more seamlessly than we are right now. It's a lot of workarounds that the technology department has to do to get that to work well. And so going this route will help streamline that. This does tie to Active Directory. I'm sorry, I'm skipped a bullet. This has unlimited customizing and zoning. We can give our students at the high school that go out for, that have the ability to go to the college for classes and go in and out of the facility, we can assign them a badge, and they can come and go, and we can still maintain a secured building. We don't have to worry about going out and unlocking doors and, having staff members stand there. Then we can assign badges and let kids in and out with the badges. Again, this does tie with Active Directory. It can provide access based on the role within the district, so whether that's athletics or our substitutes or whomever might be coming volunteers, we can do specific roles and give people specific access a lot more better with this new system than we can with our older. Again, ties the security system, provides our one-button lockdown, and this is one that we, are excited to try here or to work on with our local law enforcement agencies too. But this information is shareable with the Crow Wing County Sheriff's Office. So they have a similar system at Crow Wing County, and if we get into an instance where we did have an emergency at our facilities, they would be able to see what's going on real time and coordinate the dispatching of law enforcement officials to our buildings to help us. So just as a budget breakdown, in your packet there should have been a little spreadsheet there. We got a head-end server for $23,250. Baxter Elementary, $92,736. Nisswa for $51,917, and Harrison for $54,947. And I do want to make a note that the head-end server, New Baxter, and Harrison will come out of our technology line item in our district-wide budget. So if you recall, Damien has the ICS crew. They have about a $2 million line item there for district technology, which will be card access, cameras, PA systems, and other technology needs like smart boards and things like that we don't have in our inventory. Nisswa will not be funded out of there because if you may recall, and I believe it was in 2017 or so, we applied for a school safety grant, and we were awarded $195,000 for the improvement to Nisswa Elementary. So card controls to building security will be funded through that Minnesota MBE school safety grant. And then we're procuring this. We're proposing to procure this system through the CPC. It's the Cooperative Purchasing Connection. This little graphic here shows that CPC is a cooperative of all of these, it's a conglomeration of all of these cooperatives here, and the one in white is Sourcewell. So they're really the whole entire state minus Sourcewell at this point. And they have bid out these systems and these solutions just like we do for CDWG for buying computers. We buy off of those same sorts of contracts. So we're procuring this through that methodology to expedite it and get us in time here so that we can open in September. That's all I have for you right now. Is there any questions that anybody has?
Yeah.
Hi, Reed. I have a question that has come from the community. I hear this a lot where people say, great system, and this will be a great system, but it seems like kids, or I shouldn't even say kids, that people could somehow get in during the opening or closing hours with the crush of students that are coming in. What are the safeguards that we can protect against that so we can tell the community that we can prevent that?
I think that, I think the important part about that, Director Nystrom, is that we're going to be able, with the entrances that we've created with these facilities now, it's going to be much easier for us to control who's coming in and out of the buildings. We're going to be able to staff people there when the buses are dropping kids off at the elementary schools. When we have the high school going on now, talking with Charlie and Andrea and everybody at the high school, we're not having kids going back and forth across Flint Street down to South Campus. So we're bringing kids and staff into 2 specific locations at the high school. And beyond that, we're, along with the card access system, we're going to be putting cameras there. So, if people really, really, really want to get into a building, they're going to come in, like you said, they're going to try and come in with our kids. They're going to try and come in through the lobby and, just adding all of these security levels that we're doing here, reducing the amount of times our doors are left unlocked, providing access cards to the kids that are going to and from post-secondary or going to the college for their education. I think that's going to help reduce the liability that we have there on getting people into these facilities.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Reed? Thank you, Reed.
Thanks, Reed.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, we'll look for a motion to approve the safety card access as presented.
I move to approve the approval of safety card access proposals from Allstate Communications for Wave 1 elementary schools as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Director Blackmon, second by Director Nelson for approval of the safety card access proposals as presented. Any further discussion? Not, those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Up next is a presentation by Corey Reynolds on facility rental and naming of schools. Corey and maybe Charlie.
Hello again. We'll start with policy 560, naming of school buildings or facilities. What you have in front of you is, last time we looked at this way back a million years ago in March, some board members felt like there was a conflict, I believe, in the language of item 2B and 3G. And so it was my thought that, as you'll see in the red line version, if we just strike the one statement that says, and have equal relevance to all, then those two are possibly in better alignment.
Which ones did you strike again?
2B, the last statement.
Oh, I see, okay.
And then my thought was that that brought it into better alignment with 3G.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Corey on that? This is the first reading of policy 560.
Also move the approval of policy 560 for the
Second.
first reading.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Director Nystrom, second by Director Kern for approval of first reading of policy 560. Any discussion? Not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Next up will be first reading of MSBA policy 902, use of school district facilities and equipment.
All right. Well, settle in. I don't know that I can do this very concisely because this is such a complicated sort of bowl of spaghetti that touches lots of different areas of the school district. So I'll just let you know that this need to work on this policy was pressing back a million years ago in March when it was on the board retreat agenda. At this point, now that we're sliding into July, it's becoming urgent. And as we talk, I'll share more about that. So what you have before you is, in summary, as an overview, is that we are proposing that you adopt MSBA Model Policy 902, the use of school district facilities and equipment. At the time that you adopt it, our hope would be that you would retire or repeal District Policy 810, which is the use of school district facilities and equipment. Very similar language in both, but I think if we stick with the MSBA numbering system, then we stay up to date on the best legal precedents, because MSBA does that work for us. So it'd be nice to align with what they're doing. You're also going to see here a staffing proposal with over 1 million square feet of facility in the district. It does require some people to manage the use of all of that. So I'll talk about that too. Let me first talk about why. Why would we propose that, and why would we propose these changes now? First, this is part of ongoing policy review. When we were at the 800s, maybe a year or so ago, the work that you're seeing before you was already underway, but we weren't quite ready to come to the board, and we knew we wanted to have a better idea of where the new and updated facilities would have us. So another reason this is important now is to position ourselves to manage those new and updated facilities. We always want to provide sound fiscal management. We want to limit the district liability. Anytime anyone is in our building or on our field or using our equipment, there is risk there. We want to be good managers of that risk. And then, as always, we want to protect our taxpayers' generous investment in their school buildings. So all of this, these are the goals in the background that are running there. I mentioned that the need to work on these policies and is becoming quite urgent, and that is because we have people contacting us about using facilities next calendar year. I've taken a number of emails recently about when the Performing Arts Center is going to open, and we certainly want that building to be used, and so we need to have a strategy and some direction from the board as to how to make use of that. We know in the fall we have new and updated facilities opening at Baxter, Harrison, and Nisswa. I think there are a number of people throughout the community who are really excited about those gyms and are going to want to put them to good use. Again, the Performing Arts Center, the Warrior Early Learning Center will be complete next spring. And then next spring and summer, we would look at a grand opening for the Performing Arts Center with the Wave 2 projects coming after that. So what seems maybe like a long time is not really. As I said, people want to know now about scheduling for next year. So that's a timeline we're looking at. So I should mention that we have been working on this policy update for something like 4 years. It has been a slow labor of love doing this. And although I hate being patient, we have tried to be patient and really analyze the data. And so what you have here is just some of the data points that we utilized as we developed these. So first, our current policy versus our current practice of using these facilities. Over time, off-policy usage of our agreements have cropped up just because we didn't have all the facilities we needed. And so we looked at that and how different those are from what our current policy says, and we wanted to bring those two things together as we came for this revision. We looked at the behavior of rentals. Our buildings are full. Forest View and Brainerd High School during the average school year are busy with out-of-school time use, something upwards of 80 to 90% of the time, with really that 10 to 15% that is not used being district holidays when we won't even unlock the door for people. So we We have gleaned a lot about what people who use the facilities need based on how they've acted, how they've accessed, how much access, what they're using it for, the time periods, and you'll see that woven in here. So we've taken a lot of feedback from our renters, even though they may not have realized it. We also looked at information from competitive districts, those who are immediately around us. If you don't like what the deal you get in Pillager, you might come to Brainerd or vice versa. So we thought that was important to have an idea of what those districts immediately adjacent to us do, how they handle their facilities. And then we also wanted to look at those districts that are like us. So places like Alex and Bemidji that have a performing arts center, that have a number of gyms. We want to follow them on. That's sort of the marketplace for those facilities, so we want to make sure that we're aligned with what they're doing. We're not too high, not too low. We're kind of find that good sweet spot. I already talked about future needs. All of this work has been done looking ahead to when we will have more square footage. That 1 million square feet is going to increase a lot, and we want to be ready for that. We don't want to leave a beautiful ribbon cutting celebration and then think about how people can access the facilities. We want to be ready for that sooner than that. And then, through the referendum process and since then, really, we've had a number of task forces, core groups, listening sessions. We have been in communication and in conversation with our community about what they want and need from their facilities for years. And that's part of why this work has taken so long, is because we really wanted to listen carefully to what they've been saying, and that has really influenced what we've come up with. So, moving along then to the actual meat and potatoes, a couple of items about 902 that you'll see. In board book, you should see what I'm calling a dashboard view, so kind of a spreadsheet that is something of an outline of the two policies right next to each other, so you can see where the different items are and where we've added things, and in some cases maybe subtracted things. So the things to know about these, or policy 902, is that our legal counsel and insurance representatives have both reviewed it. Our legal counsel looked through it with a fine-tooth comb and really did a lot to make sure the language was consistent, make sure it met current case law and these kind of things, and that the district was clear and consistent and legal in all the guidelines we were putting out there. We have had involvement internally through a number of meetings with our activities department. Charlie and I have worked a lot on this. Buildings and grounds has been involved, business services, of course, community education and other district leadership. We've also included technology, because they have a piece of this too. So all stakeholders from all those groups have been a part of this development, so that we knew that what we're proposing really works for all of our internal departments as well as the external users who use this. You also see before you the appendix. So the policy calls for an appendix that lay out the fees for using district facilities and equipment. Again, our legal counsel went through this with a fine-tooth comb. Our insurance representatives went through it, making sure that it fits the current needs of the district and of renters. So you'll see that there's more clarity here about the reservation process and the priorities, who gets to use the facility and what order we prioritize, because there are some times when we're going to have to make choices about who has access. So, I see one mistake on my PowerPoint here. It says new fees listed, and that is true. And I'll just note, it says with an embedded escalator, and given the realities that we're in the midst of a pandemic, we remove that embedded escalator. We know that that families in the community and our nonprofits have been affected financially. And in light of that, we felt like we needed to kind of on a year-by-year basis take a look at the fees, come back to you and see if kind of we were ready to increase rather than put an automatic escalator. So that is one change here that should be noted.
One thing too that I'd like to add is that the fees that she's going to be presenting tonight are just to help us break even. This is not about making any additional money or anything. It's just to break us even with the expenses that we have for our facilities and so.
Yes, keep that in mind when I talk about budget.
Yep.
We'll need that. You'll see in the appendix that the personnel fees have been updated to cover their contractual costs. So many of these positions are part of a collective bargaining group that specifically have provisions about how they'll be paid for out-of-school time work. So that's reflected here. I want to note that consumables, utilities, and most equipment costs are embedded into the fees. We didn't want to put those as line item. We want to recognize that they are costs to using the facilities, but that we have included those costs into the fees or embedded them. On board book, you will see, again, what I'm calling another dashboard. This time it's more of a spreadsheet, and it's showing you kind of a side-by-side comparison of the fees in policy 810 and what we're proposing in 902. And then at the end, you can see the information about comparable and competitive districts. So that's that spreadsheet, if that was confusing, but I thought it important for you to see those things side by side. And one thing I'd like to note is in what we are now calling Tier 2, which is tax-exempt youth-serving organizations, our current policy does lay out some costs there, but there's also a footnote to that policy that basically exempts anyone in Tier 2 from paying any sort of rental fees for those buildings. And you'll see that we're proposing in what I hope is a very modest way to do something different now. That doesn't feel sustainable, given that that group is our largest renter of our facilities. So, ooh, that looks interesting. So this is supposed to say our strategy for updating fees. I'm not sure what language that is. So as you look at that fee dashboard, what I hope that you'll see is that the bigger the space, the bigger the price. That there's some relationship between size and price. So a classroom, which is, one of the smaller units of space here in the district, would be the lowest price, and a large 12,000 seat auditorium would be the highest price. That maybe at some point was part of the fee structure currently, but my mind is not mathematical enough to detect those patterns, so I want to be really clear that we were doing that. When I look at the current policy, I see a preference for youth tax-exempt local organizations. So that is basically describes our Tier 2 group. Tier 1 would be sort of our internal, our district-sponsored things, community ed, and then Tier 2 would be these things. So when you look at the fee structure, if you're going to get the best deal if you're a tax-exempt local youth-serving organization, and then if you're commercial and not local, you will pay more. So, which I should mention is not uncommon in the other districts that fee structures that I studied. This is very common, and it frankly exists in our current policy as well. It clarified it a little more. This is a big one. We want to limit the impact on participation. We know if we increase fees for 2 organizations, they have to pass that fee on to their participants, which could result in lowered participation, which is not an outcome we desire. And so it's kind of why we've taken a rather, in my opinion, small step towards adjusting our fees, because we don't want to price families out of using our facilities, which is related to recognizing the value of what renters provide. So I mentioned that our Tier 2 group, those local tax-exempt youth-serving organizations, are our most frequent renter of facilities. And what they do has value in this community. I think you would all agree. I see that when I look at that. And at the same time, we do have operational costs. So we did a lot of math, and what we found is over the last 5 years, on average, it costs $6.5 million to operate our 1.25 million square feet. That translates into $5.19 a square foot. The lowest cost per hour for those tier 2 people is $2.50 an hour. And my suggestion would be, or my hypothesis would be, that the space between that $2.50 an hour and that $5.20 per square foot is your recognition of the value that those outside organizations bring when they use our facilities as community gathering spots to provide out-of-school time activities, sports, programs for the community. I realize.
Just so you're aware, in our board book, it shows 446
Oh,
on the per
okay.
square, so there must have been some additional math done after.
I could, yes. I changed my mind about how to reflect that. So the 446 is the per hour amount that it costs us to operate a gym. So a gym, a basketball court, is approximately 4,700 square feet. It costs us about a little over $24,000 a year to operate. So that would translate to $446 an hour for a gym, and we're proposing $250 an hour. So, yeah, sorry to switch up the numbers on you like that. I think the point is still the same no matter how we do the math. It costs us more to operate the facilities than we are asking to charge, which makes sense because we have our own uses that is our own responsibility, the school day activities, the high school athletics, things like that. But there is a portion that is above and beyond our own usage that we are proposing to ask the renters to contribute to. Ooh. So this is supposed to say staffing proposal.
Can we go back to,
Yes.
just for example, Forest View gym per court?
Yep.
For a tax exempt youth, could you tell me what that, just to make sure I'm reading this properly, what the proposed would be for less than 4 hours and what the current is?
Sure. So at a gym, so for 4 courts, for less than 4 hours, so whether it's an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, we are proposing that it would cost $5. The current policy says 22 or 28, depending on how you read it, and the tiers in the current policy are a little different. That's why you see those 2 figures. So, and it could be also that we charge for the entire gym rather than per court.
Because it says here per court, so it's $5 per court?
Yes.
But before, or currently, we were charging more?
That is correct, but you'll see the note that most would pay nothing. Because of that exemption for youth-serving organizations not to pay rental fees, we almost never charge that $22 an hour.
Same for if they used it for 48 hours?
Correct.
They wouldn't be charged for anything?
At this time, almost no, we charge almost no one for that.
Okay, got it.
I can't think of anyone we charge, but I don't want to say nobody, because, in case I'm wrong. So, yes, on the books, we have for instance, $22 an hour, which it felt weird to propose to go back to $5 an hour, except in light of that exemption. That I think the jump from $0 to $5 felt like it would be better for organizations than going to the $22. Okay, we'll move on to staffing then. So currently, what you see is something like this. We have a .1 position, so these duties are nestled into another person's job here in the district, and that person takes care of spaces in Washington and Franklin. And this is primarily at Washington would be Tornstrom, the cafeteria and the gym We handle the conference rooms a little bit differently than that. We also have a .6 FTE who's doing basically everything else. So all the other schools, primarily gyms, fields, and cafeterias. They're
Corey?
scheduling.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Are these people currently employed, or do you have to hire them special?
This 1.0 is hired.
Okay.
This person here is currently laid off, but
Okay.
expected to be recalled on July 1st.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just wanted to.
Oh, that's a great question.
But this past year, that person was on the payroll?
Yes, correct. So this is what we're proposing to go to, where we would have a 1.0 scheduling coordinator who schedules all the district facilities, including the performing arts spaces, and then we would hire a 1.0 technical manager for performing arts spaces specifically. So this would be the person who is knowledgeable about the lights and the soundboard and all the computer systems in place. This position would live in the technology department. The scheduling position would live in community ed, but they would work very closely together, in tandem, really.
So is that FTE for scheduling coordinator, is that the person in your office that, as a youth coach, I call in and
Yes.
when I need something changed, that's the person?
That would be that person.
And what was that person before, hours-wise, or FTE-wise?
That person was .6.
Okay.
So we had a .1 and a .6 to manage our current spaces, and I'm proposing to go to a 1.0 consolidated into one person, who does all the facilities, including a number of new gyms in the Performing Arts Center.
I think that's great. Can't imagine doing that job.
It's not an easy one.
Corey, for the .1 and the .6, could that person's first name be Justin? Or,
We would run a hiring process and hope
Oh.
that the very best candidate was identified.
okay.
Okay, so just an overview of the facilities management we're proposing, that it would encompass all the spaces, performing arts spaces, and the other spaces. Right now, we've kind of broken those down between two different people. We'd be looking at 2 people, full-time year-round. The scheduling coordinator who would do more of, I think you would call maybe at the back of the house stuff? No, that's not right. Would be the person that you would call to reserve any space in the entire district, who would collect insurance, communicate with the custodians on any setup, tear down needs, all of that. And then the tech coordinator who would run the lights and sounds and cameras and do all that work.
They would also do the billing, correct?
Yes, the scheduler would do the
billing to make sure that everybody is treated equal.
Yes.
Because one of the things we found is that it was so
We're all over the
sporadic,
place.
where some were getting billed and some weren't, and we just need to be consistent to make sure that we're breaking even on this process.
We do have a small amount of secretarial support worked into these positions, or that's supporting the current positions, and I would propose to continue that as well, to help with some of those secretarial tasks like invoicing.
Corey, on the tech, the scheduling one makes sense to me. On the tech position, when it says works all PA events, is that performing arts?
Yes.
What if there's events going on at the PA, but events elsewhere at the same time?
Yes, I don't expect that we would have huge events like in Tornstrom and at the Performing Arts Center at the same time, because there would be too much competition for audience. But it could certainly happen that there is a program at one of the elementary schools and something in the Performing Arts Center. And that's where we would expect this person to develop a little workforce of student techs. So perhaps a student tech could be dispatched to one of the smaller events while that person stayed back and supervised maybe another student who was working at the Performing Arts Center.
Okay. Do you anticipate that might be a tough position to fill?
I
guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the performing arts field, especially in the cities, I think has unfortunately suffered during the pandemic. And so one possible benefit, if it's okay to say that, might be that there's somebody looking to work in a smaller market. And I think we have some, the Lakes Area Music Festival comes to mind. You know, it's a world-renowned event that is very specifically tied to Brainerd and to our facilities, and I think has such a good reputation that that might be part of, they could help us recruit, and it would be part of the draw to come here knowing that they would get to work with organizations like that.
Good, thank you.
Okay, then we move on to the budget. I should mention that there's some softness to these numbers. One, just depending on hiring timelines. We made our revenue projections based on the best information we had for the last 5 years, and then a pandemic hit that sort of threw everything out of the water. So there's some work to be done here, some fine tuning, if you will, before it comes to you for full adoption. But I do want to make sure you all understand this budget has been carefully pieced together, again, based on the behavior of our renters. So we have some expectations about the degree to which our facilities would be rented and how much, with the current fee structure, or the fee structure we're proposing, what kind of revenue that would bring in. So any tweaks to any numbers that you would do would have a significant ripple effect to this budget. I also mentioned the hiring timelines. I may not want to hire the scheduling coordinator until we have a better idea of how other community ed programs will operate in the fall. I may have some FTE available to work on that to do that kind of thing if community ed is not back to normal, which seems quite probable. But that's what we're looking at.
So I'm trying to do the math in my head here. Expense total is 172K, and the net total, the negative 98, is what?
So we are projecting, and again, this is where there's a little softness because these were our best projections based on typical behavior over the last 5 or 6 years, and we're now in a non-typical time, so I just got to give that disclaimer. So we're looking at an expected or hoped for revenue of $74,000 with expenses of $172.30, and so the net would be $98,000.
Okay, and is that in line with kind of what's been a line item budget for us in this year or previous years from a contribution?
That's a good question. What we have found over the years is that the expenses and revenue were sort of scattered and spread out through through this general fund and through community ed. This year, Marcy, Lord, and I worked together to bring those revenues and expenses into one place so we could compare them side by side. Those numbers have informed us, but again, this is not a typical year anymore. So these are our best estimates. We've looked at the past 6 years of history and tried to project how people would act knowing we have new and upgraded facilities. So we expect that the people who have rented Tornstrom maybe would stay in Tornstrom or go to the Performing Arts Center, and maybe this is just an example, and maybe the Performing Arts Center would draw in some business as well. I should also say this is not what I hope a long-term budget would be. I hope this is a startup budget. We can't sustain this kind of loss. It's just not good business practice for very long. My hope was that if we get the right people in the positions, if they're out there promoting our facilities as the world-class facilities that they are and bringing in more business, that we would see this budget turn around in, I hope, a few years.
Do you know what our current revenue, yearly revenue is from these?
It's about $58,000.
Okay, so 74 seems doable with all the new spaces we're having.
Correct.
Did you say 5,800?
1,000. I may have said 100, but I meant 1,000.
I assumed you meant 58,000 if you
Yeah.
said that, but yeah.
I don't understand then, the number says 24,000 for public spaces?
For performing arts spaces?
Oh, just for the performing
Yep,
arts?
and then
Okay.
the next line item of 50,000 would be for gyms, cafeterias, things like that.
You know, go ahead, Bob.
I've just been, I don't want to be nitpicky, I've just been working the numbers here. Lakes Area Music Festival, I assume, would be in Tier 3. That means for a full day, they would pay $600 a day, and conceivably, they could be here for 30 days. That would be $18,000. Also, let's just say we start out with 4 special events throughout the year. In other words, who knows, an Engelbert Humperdinck concert that comes in. Let's say it'd be 6 days, because some of these will be on a Saturday, Sunday. That would be $1,200, Tier 4. That would be $7,200 for 6 days. And then also, just for kicks, usually rents Forest View, and I know that's a major thing. So it seems like the number might be a little bit conservative that you're saying. Am I wrong? I mean,
For the revenue number.
for the revenue.
I hope so.
Okay,
I
I
sure
think
hope
it's going
so.
to be a lot more.
Me too, I hope so.
Okay,
I'd rather be generous with our expenses and conservative with our revenue, just to be safe. But I would
Yeah,
love to be proved wrong on this
I
budget.
I would have concern with the fees that we're setting based on this. I think our expenses are going to be a lot higher. If you can find a technical manager for 45 grand, I don't know how in the world you're gonna do that. But, and my concern is that the more activities we have at the current revenue level, the greater our loss will be.
Well, the difference between what we're doing now and what we're proposing to do is that the fees would be offset. Those expenses, you know, if a Tier 2 organization used Tornstrom for a few hours for a special event, at this point, we would not charge them anything. We would incur costs because we would have a tech there running the sound and the lights for them, but I suppose we would collect for a person at this time, but we would not collect anything for facility use, and we're proposing to change that.
and Corey, I agree with Tom. I think we need to do this right when we start. We need to pay more. Let's have almost a full-time tech person if we can justify it, because I think the demand will be there.
Yes.
Yeah, and we want the right person.
Well, my concern also is that when we open the doors on the Performing Arts Center, that we're doing it correctly, right from the beginning. That, you know, what we've seen develop over the years is we haven't had specific staff in place, so in some cases, we've just turned over the keys to a whole facility that has really expensive equipment, and organizations have just helped themselves to it, and that has cost the district a lot of money. There's been damage, people using things incorrectly.
Yeah, you and the whole team, Charlie, everyone has put a lot of time into this. There's a lot of information, which is wonderful. I just wonder if we need to take another pass on the financial piece so that we don't find out after year one where we're in the, we're deficit by $300,000-400,000 or something.
Just a quick question with the technical manager, and maybe you mentioned this, Corey, but is that position been compared to other type of facilities as ours?
Yes. Yeah, we got the idea for it from some of the tours that our groups went on. We pulled job descriptions. I looked, at the theater market, found a similar job description. In our mind, this is a little more technology than specifically performing arts, and maybe that accounts for the difference. If this was strictly somebody working on the performing arts, the price point might be a little different, but we're running this as a technology position, and so this was in line with that market.
So if they're not working with the Performing Arts Center, that person might be working at the high school to help out and do some technology. So there might also be some funding that comes from the district through technology,
Right.
above
And
and beyond this 45,000.
Yeah, you see the $9,000 in the Fund One revenue area, that would, the plan, according to Sarah Porsch, would be that the contract you all approved recently for the district to provide tech support to the Paul Bunyan Co-op, this person would do that. So the amount that the co-op would contribute would go towards this person's salary and benefits.
The other thing I was just noticing is the other staff, custodian to student techs, that 37,350
Mhm.
is half of your total revenue. And that amount is gonna totally be offset by fees that people are paying, right? Because we're charging, so it seems like either our revenue isn't enough or that expense is too high. Because it can't be half, it wouldn't come out to be half of the total revenue. I mean, because you're getting that all back in revenue.
What was that again?
You wouldn't get it all back because those staff also work at at what we call
Oh, level
Tier
one.
1
Tier one, okay.
events as
Still,
well.
it still seems like if you're gonna have that much expenses in custodian and student techs, your revenue is gonna be higher than that. And you've done a lot of work on this,
Mhm.
but I think that there's just so many unknowns right now that, I mean, do we break even on this right now? We don't.
No,
No.
absolutely
Yeah,
not.
so,
Not even close.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think we just have to try it one year and then figure out how much more our revenue is gonna go up in the coming years and if we have to change our rates. But the rates are comparable to other districts, so.
The
Corey?
other thing to know is that the district cannot afford to fund these additional fees in all of these additional spaces if we aren't being consistent with collecting the rental.
So that'll make a big difference too.
Correct, and we talked about budget at the last couple of board meetings, and we don't have the money to go in the hole on this, so.
But I guess I agree a little bit with Bob too, is I think if things come back and we can have events, our revenue seems kind of low.
Well, and I can tell you too a little bit about how I developed that number. I looked at 6 years worth of revenue activity. I also went through 1 year of, I just took all the facility rental we had and went through, put those people where they would be, or those organizations
Okay.
where they would be on the chart, and then estimated what the new, what they would have paid if we were on the new fee schedule.
And did you
So-
include the custodians and the AV techs in that revenue?
Yeah, I mean, the number
Okay.
you see there is reflective of that cost over the last several years.
No, but the revenue that you get from those, because that's, yeah, I don't know. That seems like that's kind of new and
That's-
would generate a lot of revenue.
There's a potential, but that was I was
Okay,
looking at
okay.
those numbers.
Okay.
Those are reported in our system separately than rental fees. So I looked at overtime separate from
Corey?
fees.
I want to let you know I respect your model, and I want to say that you have put so much effort and time into this. I want to thank you for that, and Charlie, also for you. My question is about the Performing Arts Center.
Mhm.
When we ran this referendum, we told the people that it might be semi-independent, and that we would bring other groups in. And I would hope that we as a school board would support that. But the other thing, because it would be a community performing arts center, could we not potentially get help outside of the school district to fund these positions, say through Sourcewell? And I know Sourcewell has done a lot for us, but because this is a regional performing arts center, maybe they would help us the first couple years. And I just throw their name out, maybe there's other groups that could
Well,
help.
let me address that a little bit. When we created the job description for the tech manager and the scheduling coordinator, there is a line item in there that they would work together. I don't remember the exact verbiage on it now, but they would both participate in convening a community advisory board to the Performing Arts Center, that they would bring together our important stakeholders in the region who access these spaces and work together to create an aligned calendar that takes into account the school calendar and events and things. But yes, that is something we heard loud and clear through the listening sessions and task forces, that you know, if a performing arts center happened, that we would want a lot of community input into how it's run. So that has been planned for. We have not explored the idea of, like, for instance, Sourcewell funding. We could. I don't have a good Rolodex of grant opportunities in my
Lane's
brain.
really good at it.
But we could.
How about the
look
state arts funding? Can we get anything?
Potentially,
That-
potentially.
Mhm.
But we have to have somebody in charge to do it. And that's part of what worries me about the scheduling coordinator. If they're gonna do all of our buildings, that's gonna be hard if they're gonna head it up with the Performing Arts Center. And we've had this talk, so this isn't a surprise. But if they're gonna help put the advisory team together, do the scheduling with school events first, and then fill it in with others, that's gonna be a huge job. And then do the billing and everything for everyone. I can see where the day isn't gonna be, hopefully, it's gonna be very soon, where we just have a scheduling coordinator for the Performing Arts Center alone. And then that's what you were referring to. But right now, we just can't afford to do, we can't afford to do that until we see what we're gonna generate here.
Corey, the question that I have is, still trying to understand the breadth of the technical manager position. And I don't need it all laid out to me. You've done a wonderful job so far. But just for my own head, so on my drive home, I don't end up calling you to clarify, is my only experience with Performing Arts Center was when I lived in Grand Rapids and the Rife Center. Wonderful facility, wonderful.
We've
And they
talked a
had an
lot about
individual there
Yep.
that I knew quite well, and he was the, not just the voice, but he was the face of the Rife Center for that community. Now, of course, they have a lot of dollars at Landon Foundation, that sort of thing, that we might not be able to access. But
And
is that what
there's
this
several
was?
years into that.
What's that?
There's several years into the development of that center and that organization.
Right, so two questions.
Sure.
The first one is that technical manager supposed to be that role then? That's gonna be out there trying to beat the bushes for acts to be coming in or opportunities to be coming in?
So what we have promised our performing arts organizations is that we are not in the business of staging our own shows. We stage the high school productions and the St. Francis Christmas pageant. We do those kind of things, but we, as Brainerd Public Schools, is not going to go out and hire the Trampling Turtles to come in and perform in the Performing Arts Center. We're not going to, that's not our lane. And Scott Likens told us there's a term for it.
It's basically the advisory committee that will do that, but it's
Right.
gotta be led by the district. Because this is a school-owned facility and a referendum-won facility.
So we will
so-
make the facility
Right.
available to people who
Right.
want to bring in Lori Line or the Fabulous Armadillos or, Yo-Yo Ma or whatever. But we will not be those people who bring Yo-Yo Ma here. We will just make sure the organization that does has access to our facilities. So that's a really big distinction between what we're proposing to do and what the Rife Center does. They're
Right.
a separate nonprofit, and they actually produce, sponsor, put up their own acts.
Very clear. And then the last part, second part of my question, and then there's a .5 to this question, so.
Bonus.
Is it possible, when I was, I stepped onto the board at the YMCA here in the Brainerd Lakes area a couple years back, and we didn't have a director at that point in time, but we purchased time from, I believe it was Alexandria with their director, who's quite skilled and talented, to be able to provide some of those pieces, like you said, about making sure that we get off the ground properly. Is there any way that we could enter into a partnership with, I don't know, another entity? Doesn't have to be Grand Rapids. I don't even know if how they're functioning right now. But to be able to bring somebody in that we could partner with and kind of mentor us through that first year to make sure that in terms of the door opening and all that type of thing, that there's that process. Anyway, that's all I'll say on that. And then finally, the council that you're referencing, or the group that will be brought together, I'll just be very upfront. As an individual like myself and in the community, I want to make sure that I have a voice. And with the Performing Arts Center, performing arts, that's significant, but also there's a huge cultural component that we could reap the benefits of by having this facility. And I'm a little concerned, and I don't need to unpack this now, but that committee or council or whatnot, that we're mindful of the players that are on that council. And that the entities that might even be from an underrepresented background, or maybe not even with a horse in the race, if you will, to be a part of that. Or at least I would like to, I guess, down the road, be a part of that conversation. Because I just have some, I guess, my eyebrow raised in terms of what that's going to look like.
I think it would be important to be very clear about what the role of that advisory committee would be. And it could evolve. You know, you talked about mentoring and things, and I could see that committee in the beginning sort of providing that to the staff there, that they could share, you know, even what is the terminology, the word I can't think of that means you're sponsoring a show, and maybe it's just sponsoring, versus you are letting somebody else use your space to sponsor a show. So I think clarifying the roles and responsibilities of that committee would be important.
Corey, I have a 0.5 to round out. Charles is up to a full 3.
Ooh, all right.
I'm more of a numbers person, so I might have missed it, but if this budget says roughly a negative 100K, and do we think that's more or less than what we're currently doing from a district contribution?
I believe this would be more than what the current loss we're sustaining each year.
This is a greater loss.
Correct.
And it just seems to me that that we might want to consider that revenue source in those fees. I think about the one example of $5 if it's under 4 hours. You can't even flip the light switch on for $5, and I just think that maybe the revenue is going to be a lot more, but I think the expenses are going to be a lot more. And it just seems like we would, I don't know that, we've already asked the community to step forward with question number 3, so they're already paying for the facility, and ask them to help pay for running it. I'm uneasy with that. It seems like we should have a lot of history if it's like the Lakes area as an example. If we know roughly how many days that revenue source, and that I don't know if you and team and Marcy can take another swing at that, but I'm just concerned about going into a greater deficit with what I think might be low fees. I don't know. I realize Director Nystrom did some quick math, and it's 6,000 or 18,000, those kind of things. But the reality is, it's a $7.5 million facility that was added on for the community. It needs to be self-supporting.
Yes.
And you can't invest those kind of dollars and expect to get 24,000.
Right. No, I share your concern. It is nerve-wracking to present a proposed budget to you with a $100,000 deficit, especially when we're in the midst of a pandemic. And you know, when I first put these numbers together, there was a substantial community ed fund balance that could absorb this for a while, not indefinitely, but for a while. We don't know the size and scope of that fund balance starting July 1st. We know it will be much less. And so, yeah, our ability to sustain that it has been reduced quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, you have the structure in place, the financial structure in place. I just think that the review of the revenue and expenses just needs to be brushed up a bit more.
Director Hagelin, could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Please.
So maybe what I'm hearing is you would eliminate tier 2, the youth, and just do tier 3 and tier 4 and maybe have more from tier 4 because they're out of town, or it's a special group like Lakes Area Music Festival? Is that what you're?
Well, it could be. So if tier 2, and we're going to have this secretary coordinator scheduling to pick up $5, it's going to cost us more than $5 to get that $5. Maybe it's going to cost us $100. I don't know. But if they spend a minute on the phone or two, we've already spent that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, the tier 2, 3, 4s or whatever, 1, 2, 3, how that should all break out. But
Well, and I can tell you too that tier 2 is a volume business. It's relatively less work, but there's way more of it because there are more basketball teams in January through March. Whereas tier 4, there are fewer of them, but they require much more work on our end. So,
Corey, I know that you know this, but there's a lot of pain in the community, mainly emanating from tier 2. That's the youth or tax-exempt youth, and I know that's where the volume is.
mhm.
But is there some way, because so many of those kids are low income, where they need scholarships just to participate, and now we're going to create a higher expense for organizations like BYAA? Is there a way that we could make tier 2 easier? I know that's where the volume is.
I think we should probably take another look at it. Again, tonight is just the first reading. The second, because I listened to that and I think, but we don't want to have it so high that people say, oh, we aren't going to Brainerd because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to find that happy medium where we feel like we can break even and yet it's attractive to people that they want to use our facilities in our district. And so I think tonight this is the first reading, as Corey said. It was our hope and dream that we were going to be able to do this at the March board retreat, and then because of COVID, it wasn't able to happen. I am not opposed, however, to putting a small group together to just look at the financial piece of this again, and because we have 2 more readings before this thing is final. And so I think with Marcy, Corey, myself, and a couple of board members, it might be a good idea just to look at the financial piece of this, if you guys would be okay with that.
Sounds like a good plan.
If that's the direction, I would like, I'm not sure on one hand, I sort of hear the revenues look a little bit lower than what we were hoping. At least for the first year, I don't, especially when we change fees, I don't expect that we would have drastically increased use of the facilities.
I think we'll have a lot of use, especially with them being new. People are going to want to be in there when they're new. It's everybody just gets excited about that. I think tonight, though, all we're saying is let's pull a team together before we do our second reading and just take a look at this. And she has worked tirelessly, hours and hours and hours to get there. Just incredibly beautiful job. And you need to bring that data that you've brought to me and that you've brought to others and just really present all of that so that you can see what the full picture looks like. The policy right now just shows what the recommendation is. It doesn't show all the work that you've done. And so I think we just need to put together a group to do that.
The structure and framework is beautiful. It's there, and I like that idea. But if we want to proceed with approving at least that structure with the financial piece to be.
Yeah, because this isn't part of what we're approving tonight.
Right, it's just the first reading.
Yeah.
So could I make that motion?
Sure.
That we approve the first reading with the thought that we'll have a committee that will look at this again, to look at the structure, knowing that, Corey, you have worked beyond You're an incredible person. I just want you to know that. You are such a gem in this district. And
Just wanna
I know
get it
you've
right.
gotten a lot of phone calls on this.
And you will too.
Yeah, so you're doing the best that you can. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
So I'll second the approval of the first reason.
Okay, great. We have a motion by Director Nystrom, second by Director Nelson for first reading approval of policy 902 as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up will be, thank you,
Can I
Corey.
just give you one footnote?
Yeah.
Just to let you know, the communication going on my end with the renters who are affected by this. I did email them back in March that the meeting was happening and then that it wasn't. And I emailed them on Friday to let them know this information was being presented to you today. I will share all the information with them, and I've offered to talk with or meet with whoever wants to talk through this for their specific organization.
Sure.
And so my hope is to get them really informed, and that then they would bring whatever opinions or thoughts they have to you.
So that's wonderful, so that'll give us more information
Yeah.
by the second reading.
Yes.
But thank you.
And I think I heard Director Nystrom volunteering to be on that committee, so they
I
can
did.
certainly reach out to Bob.
I'll put my mouth where, however that saying was.
Thank you, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's money we're in. Oh. Uh-oh.
It is.
That might be-
It is money.
Yeah. I think that's down now.
That's out of my league, Charles.
Did you get that?
All right, thank you. Next up will be ratification of our food service contract. I think Angie is
On her way, I
on her
bet.
way, I bet, maybe coming. There she is. Come on in, Angie. No, you're fine, come on in.
We got a lot to go.
Yeah.
A lot to go. I will be brief. So we're excited to bring to the board an agreement with the Ed Minnesota Food Service Unit. We did have tentative agreement a while back, and kind of the vote was delayed due to the pandemic, among everything else, right? And so we were able to, or their unit was able to vote virtually once they closed the rest of the school year to on-site learning. So we are excited that we're able to come to agreement. Just some of the highlights, similar to some of the other settlements, the change in health insurance was one of the main talking points this period. And there's agreement to have all new employees hired following the ratification of this contract to begin on Plan G, which is the high deductible health plan, with the district contribution being the single level of coverage, and that would then be applied to the family level as well. All current employees are wanting to remain on Plans B or C with a defined contribution for the language of the teacher's contract. So very similar to some of the other groups that have settled. Current employees are wanting to remain on that teacher language. We had a couple different changes to the wage schedule to work with a few different areas. The wages, as minimum wage continues to increase, we were kind of staying just barely above where we needed for that starting step. Wanted to kind of correct that to offer our employees a higher starting salary and to, give them what they deserve, as far as when they come into the district. So we did a couple different things. In the previous contract, they had a level A, level B, and then a certified, almost like a lane. We eliminated level A, which was the lowest salary range, and switched it to non-certified and certified. So there still are training requirements within the contract that need to be met to get to that certified level, which is the higher starting wage. So that brought it up initially, and then with the timing of this ratification, the unit did agree to do a 0% increase for the 1920 fiscal year to assist the district in any type of retroactive payments, which we greatly appreciated, and then add that full increase onto the 2020-2021 fiscal year, and that would be $1 per hour. That is on every single step for both the non-certified and the certified. That really helps kind of bring those wages up to where it fits a little better with the group. And
Other changes that were made to the contract were more just the clarification of language, trying to create some consistency across all of our groups and how we're handling things, so we have kind of a more consistent approach. And that's about it. Any questions?
Any questions for Angie? Great. Thank you, Angie. Thanks for working on this, and thanks to our food service group for helping to, again, make changes in our health insurance. It's a step in the right direction. We
It
have
is.
a long ways to go, though.
Yep. We'll keep working with it. They were a very good group to work with,
Good.
so,
Thanks, Angie.
thank you.
I'll make the motion that we ratify the food service contract for 2019 through 21 as presented.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Director Nystrom, second by Director Blackmans for ratification of the food service contract as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is health insurance premium. Marcy. Good evening, Marcy.
Good evening. It is warm in here.
Oh, I thought you were shivering because you're cold. I had some questions.
No. So in the packet is a memo. I'll give you just some brief highlights, and then please let me know if you guys have questions. So the Insurance Benefits Committee was presented. We did have to go out for bids this year for medical administrative services, and then just to look at our premiums in general. So one of the changes that NIS, which is National Insurance Service, they represent us, proposed was increasing our stop loss from $175,000 to $200,000. There was some concern there on the committee about increasing that amount. However, NIS did come back and say that we would have to have 5 contracts that hit that amount for us to be at the same cost savings of that. So we are moving forward with making that change. And then in there, it talks about how we should have, an average of 3 months of our claims. NIS also included a 6-week runout, and so that'd be 30 to 35%. So when we were looking at our premium increases, NIS proposed a 0%. They recommended 0. Our contributions for next year are set at a 7.3% increase, and so the Benefits Committee talked about a 0%, a 3.5, and a 7.3. In the end, we ended up recommending the 3.5 because the 0, if we went with that, we'd be at 29.4%, which is just below that 30. But I think just to have a good comfort level with all the unknowns of next year, that 3.5 was what most of the groups were comfortable with. 7.3, we had went with that last year, and it was actually higher than what was recommended, so we kind of have some cushion there. The 2 high bids was low bids, sorry, it's vice versa. Blue Cross Blue Shield had a lower claim risk, however, Medica bid lower fixed costs. So translation on that is we are taking on a little bit more risk with Medica, but we know the fixed costs will be lower. So we are recommending moving forward with Medica, which is our current administrator. I think that covers it all. And the Medica bid is good for 2 years. We are required to go out for bids every 5. That was done, and then we continually renewed the services, and now we are due to do the bids. And so this one is a 2-year proposal. Is there any
Is that typical, 2 years? Like in the past, has it always been?
So generally, it's, well, since I've been here, it was a 2-year, and then it got extended and extended until you hit that 5-year. Once you hit 5 years, you have to go out for bids.
Okay. Thank you, Marcy.
I would so move to approve the health insurance premium increase of 3.5% for the school year 2021 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Director Kern, second by Director Nelson for approval of the health insurance premium increase to 3.5% as presented. Any discussion? Not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So along with that, our next approval would be District Health Insurance Service Administrator with Medica.
Also move the approval of that. Medica.
Second.
Motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Blacklands. Any further discussion? Not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is general liability insurance renewal. Marcy.
All right, so again, there's a memo in there, and just I'll do brief highlights. The first three policies, there'll be a 5.3% decrease from last year. The cyber liability and the crime, it would be a 0.5% and a 0% respectively. We are increasing the limit on the cyber from 500,000 to 1 million, and it was a very small increase, so Weisenegger did recommend that change. And then workman's comp, I do want to discuss this one a little bit more because it is a little bit of a change. So we continue to see our work comp mod factor go down, which is awesome. We're at a 0.63, almost 37% credit off of the rates. And there's two plans. So we have never had this retro plan that is in this proposal. We have always had the fixed cost plan. So we pay what they say for our policy. This retro plan, however, you pay a fixed cost at the beginning, but if you have claim costs that are lower, you can earn back a potential dividend. So Weisenegger did recommend that we switch to this because we have had several good years, knock on wood. So we could see a potential dividend of almost $59,000 if we go that route. If we did not go that route, if we went just continued with that guaranteed cost policy, there was a potential savings of $12,000. So we still would have saved, but we're taking on a little bit of risk here, hoping that it will pay back in reward. So the recommendation would be to move forward with all of those policies. The one thing I noticed was on the agenda, it did not list cyber. So if you could just add that in your motion, that would be great.
Marcy, I just have a question.
Sure.
On our general liability, a year from now, we're going to have all of our buildings open with the exception of maybe 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
And we have all these enhanced safety and security measures. And maybe I'm thinking on a simple level, but with car insurance, you get discounts for safety features.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't that be with an enhanced safety system like we have? I mean, even more.
Well, I can ask Jake if he would foresee something like that next year with our new features.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that they did give us that discount this year on the general just because they have, we've had low claims, they enjoy working with us. If we continue to have a good performance, they probably will, but he has not mentioned kind of like the discounts.
Maybe we got to remind him.
Yeah. Will do. Will do.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any other questions for Marcy? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move the approval of the property general liability renewal, crime liability renewal, cyber liability addition, and workers' compensation renewal as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Blacklands for approval of insurance as presented. Any further discussion? Not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is approval of our school board response to the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. Mr. Murtha. He's still awake. All right. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Ms. Reynolds thought you guys might be a little tired at this point of the evening, so I'm supposed to wake everybody up.
That's right. It's hot in here. Are you going to sing or dance?
Bring some air conditioning with you.
Yeah, I'm a little frizzy. I can't wait for the haircut I'm allowed to get now. I'm here to deliver publicly the school board response to the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee's vote of non-concurrence from earlier this year. Our response has been delayed by the advent of distance learning. There are some key components to this that the committee has requested, and we thank them for the detailed and the the specific actionable nature of the response that they brought forward in their request. I'll just take them item by item. Number one, data for context on achievement gaps. A little more context would be helpful, but the reality is because of distance learning, the data that we normally submit for the American Indian Education World's Best Workforce Plan can't be provided. And that data is detailed down as MCAs, MTAS, and the access test and the alternate access test. So in other words, the state accountability tests, we could not execute this year, so we don't have that data at this time. As noted earlier, we're attempting to look at other data that we have. Data prior to March 15th is incomplete data. Probably fairly reliable, but it doesn't indicate end of year progress. And so it's falling in some windows that make the data a little bit fuzzy. We do have some report card data at the end. As you know, we did not assess every single thing that we would normally assess by virtue of the limited nature of distance learning. The next step is we need to evaluate the accuracy of those assessments. In our comparing of such things such as fall to winter growth scores in STAR, which is a progress monitoring tool we use for reading at the elementary and middle school level, we measured that against what we saw as final assessments on curriculum-based assessments in the reading curriculum, and they don't line up. Normally they do. So we need to do some more data diving on this to come up with a more accurate picture. So I'm reticent to make any comments too much about what the data is saying at this time. Also, this is normally stuff I would report out to you once the data becomes public at the August data retreat. However, this year it's public, we don't have any. The next item is the committee asked us to fill and have a standing APAC representative on DAC. That is something that we had agreed to a long time ago, and we're still actively searching for a parent representative to join the committee. And that committee, as you know, is the committee that brings forward recommendations to the school board for the approval of curriculum and instruction. One of the other expectations was provide bias and vulnerability training for all current members of the DAC, I'm assuming the DAC, as well as ongoing training to onboard DAC members. What our plan is to revise the organizational meeting, which is the first of the 6 meetings of the year, to include the implicit bias training. The district's implicit bias training for teachers is based on Paul Gorski and Seema Pothini's research on case studies of diversity, which is the title of the book. Many of you saw that work that we did at the November in-service last fall, so we would do a version of that based on the same research and the same case studies. That creates alignment between the work that teachers are being asked to do and the approvals and recommendations that the parent committee is being asked to do. The next thing that the committee requested was information on how DAC is structured. And so how is it done? That information is provided there. The bottom line is the 2 structures that govern the creation and the execution of DAC are Minnesota Statute 120B.11 and District Education Policy 616, and I've provided copies there as well. Item number 3, professional development. I provided a detailed list of the professional development that we offer on an ongoing basis with the intentionality of the changes that we've added, particularly around culturally competent instruction. By virtue of the fact that we have 2 in-service days during the school year, that really limits us in making sure that there's time for sites to do continuous improvement process work of their own, to do technology staff development district-wide, to provide groups with curriculum writing time around the priority standards, and that last half-day slot, we rotate social emotional learning with equity work in the district. And our social emotional plan, as it's emerging from committee, is designed to align and support with the equity directions of the district. So that there lays out the core pieces of staff development. And what we really do is we try very hard to, number 1, make sure we're fulfilling the mission of the district with our staff development. Number 2, support teachers in maintaining their licenses, but doing so in a way that's aligned with adopted curriculum and district initiative. teachers technically are responsible for their own teaching licenses. However, if I have 470 teachers all doing their own thing in staff development, we're not going to get a guaranteed viable curriculum done under a common instructional framework. So we try to provide district staff development that keeps us aligned with our stated initiatives and allows teachers to fulfill their requirements for their license. The last thing is the committee would like to see the administrative team participate in the MDE self-assessment around American Indian education. The admin team has met twice on this year, with the last meeting be a collective attempt to fill it out. I do have a few absent administrators who have not yet completed it, but this is work that the admin team will complete, review collectively, and share with the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee prior to the vote of concurrence scheduled for next winter. And so that is our responses to the requests that the committee gave us.
Quick point of order, I guess, in terms of the process of this. It's my understanding that the board is to respond to MDE on this. Mr. Murtha, not necessarily you. I love the document, and you've done a lot of work with this, but the one thing that we got our hands kind of slapped for last year by Dr. Harstead, I believe it was, is that the board didn't respond. Mr. Murtha did. So in terms of process, and Tom, I'm not sure, or Director Hagelin, I'm not sure how you're planning on facilitating this, but I don't believe this is something that should simply be approved by the board and then Mr. Murtha brings it forward. This is something that process-wise has to come from the board. And also process moving forward, from where I sit, this is something that should probably come up through the board in terms of board members being part of the process. Say a committee or something like that. And this is all a learning process, and I understand that. But moving forward, just to be clear, from what I read, and I think we all received the same letter from Dr. Harstead that very clearly in terms of what she was expecting. So in terms of the document, love it. I'm pleased with the response, Tim. But just in terms of the process, I'm just a little leery about how we go about this, making sure that we don't draw the ire of MDE again on this one.
Good points. Thank you, Charles. Tim, can you comment on that as far as if this response should just come from the board?
The language of statute does indicate that the language should come from the board.
Okay, so that
I doubt if you would want to prepare a document that doesn't have either myself or Superintendent Larson participating with you in its creation. So I can offer this information in support of a board response if that would work better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or perhaps it can be submitted by the board, by yourself and our superintendent.
The language that I have in the document for the resolution wouldn't preclude that in any way, I don't believe.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be comfortable with that, Charles?
Absolutely.
I think it's a good point. And then also from a committee standpoint, I would say typically this would be something more so that would come to the board, but having board representation on the committee, I think is a great idea.
Yeah. Are we discussing board representation on the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, or is this coming through DAC?
No, this is in the event of another vote of non-concurrence. My recommendation would be, let's get a few board members, and it doesn't necessarily have to be me a part of that, but just somebody to before it's presented to us, to get the board's eyes on it, so it can also be kind of grassroots to the board as well.
Okay. I want to make sure that I make full compliance with any open meeting requirements. So if this is a document that's being generated, I think one of the reasons that it was tasked to me is it did not require any meetings that might violate open meeting law. So I'm certainly happy to, as I've done in the past, submit text to you for review prior and use blind CC to have you return to me without accidentally doing that, or do we want a more dynamic committee meeting to discuss the document as we produce it in the future?
Well, I think with this day and age of COVID, I don't know if I necessarily need us to be able to sit down in a room
Okay.
physically with 2 or 3 board members, but I would just say, with enough lead time where some of the board members can get their eyes on it, percolate about it, process it a bit, kind of a back and forth, think, well, what does this mean? Is this kind of what we're after as a board? And
Do we
then,
want to consider like a first and second reading?
Tim, can you tell me what the date is that this is due to meet the
let's do it at the end
change
of
guidelines?
June.
Yeah, end of June, so the June 28th would be the last board meeting, I believe.
Okay.
Now, June 15th sits in my head for some reason, because I knew I was becoming in the early part of the month, I didn't double check.
Well, let me ask this. I think correct me if I'm wrong, Charles, but I think more so if we received another vote of non-compliance, that's when perhaps we would look at maybe a first, second reading type draft of it. But I think at this stage, if everyone is comfortable with what you've presented, we would proceed, but it would also be coming from the board along with yourself and Lane. Is that?
Absolutely. So then if Dr. Harstead from MDE were to come back and say, why was it this process, we can articulate, well, we went through this process and this is what we've learned, and we're gonna move forward with that.
Are you comfortable with that, Tom?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I welcome any input on any document that I create.
Okay.
I do ask the board to remember, though, that each board member must sign, is expected to sign the document. That's why we provided both the assent and dissent options in the resolution, to make it comfortable for people to vote their conscience and to provide the signature appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Nystrom for approval of our school board response to American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. Any further discussion?
I do have a question. Is this considered a resolution, since it's from a resolution? So we should have a roll call vote?
Yes.
Yeah, we're planning on it. Yep.
Perfect.
Any further discussion? Looks like the wheels were spinning there, Charles.
Oh, I was just wanting to, but I think it's in the minutes that my biggest hangup was just when it's submitted to MDE, that it's just not Tim, or not just him, but that either Tom, you, the board chair, or the boards, and you mentioned that, but I just wanted
Yeah,
to make
that's a
sure.
good point.
that
Thank you for that clarity, but that's.
If I can, to address your concern of language, in the third paragraph, the Native American Parent Advisory Committee makes the following recommendations to the school board. The committee, let's back up. The Brainerd Public Schools Board of Education proposes the following in response to the American Indian Education Advisory Committee in vote of non-concurrence. So that language specifically states it's coming from the board.
And with the signature from
Yep.
all, that would.
That's great.
All right, let's have a roll call.
Tom Hagelin,
Yes?
Sue Kern,
Yes.
Ruth Nelson,
Yes.
Bob Nystrom,
Yes.
Charles Blacklands,
Yes.
all present in favor.
Great, thank you. Motion approved. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
I'll let Corey know you're awake now.
All right, thank you. Next up is our last action item is to consider moving our June 22nd meeting to Thursday, June 25th at 12 o'clock, being that we have our admin team in professional development training seminars. Is there anything more you wanted to add to that, Lane?
No, yeah, actually there is, but I realized that we're missing something about our next meeting, so I need to talk about that. On June 22nd through the 24th, we are really excited as an entire administrative team again to have a half day, a full day, and a half day of very extensive professional development. And if you're you remember last year, we went to Grandview for the first time and found it to be just an incredible experience as far as leading our district in a united way. This professional development and leadership training is being offered again this year. We are going to be social distancing and in small groups and such, and actually Brainerd is the school that they're most concerned about because I believe we have 19 people registered to go to it, but we're really excited because our entire leadership team has signed up for these 3 days. And it happens to be one of the dates of the board meeting, the 22nd. And so what we're asking, and next year when we do our organizational meeting, we already have it in our notes to try to stay away from that Monday because this is a professional development we would like to go to from this point on because we believe that it's that effective for our district. And so we're asking that the Monday night meeting, which is a regular board meeting, be moved to Thursday, June 25th at noon. And because of the date and time change, it would now be a special meeting. So any items that we talked about tonight that would be a second reading or anything like that, we couldn't adjust the agenda. So anyway, I'm just asking for that change tonight.
And it would also be a virtual meeting.
And that's the thing that we don't have on here. And let's.
It says virtual.
Yeah, it does say that. You're right. We combined the two, I guess. So it will be electronic again. The meeting requirements, Janet spent a great deal of time looking into that, and the meeting has not changed as far as being in a small group within a room such as this. So for the time being, we'll want to keep it electronic, and if it expands so that we can have a few more people, we'll do that as time goes on, but we still will want to allow people to come electronically to attend virtually because it's going to be a while before we can get 30, 40 people in this room again to meet that need. So, yes, thank you. It was in here, so that's good.
So I'll try to make the motion and have all the right. So,
I don't know if the discussion should come before or after, but I might
oh
have
no,
a-
go ahead.
I have a statewide meeting as a part of a team I'm a part of at my workplace that goes until 1:30 that day. It's been on my calendar for a while.
The 25th
On the 25th, it wraps up at 1:30.
at CLC.
Well, it's virtual, so I could be sitting on the hall and,
Oh, well, could we do it later in the afternoon, the meeting,
Sure.
rather than at noon?
yeah, that would be my only request.
Like 2 o'clock or something?
Well,
like that?
1:30 would be fine. I'm assuming it'd even wrap up a little bit earlier, but
Should we make it 2 just to be on the safe side?
2 would be better.
Okay.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Thank you very much.
So I'll make a motion that we approve to move the June 22nd, 2020 regular school meeting, make it a special board meeting to Thursday, June 25th at 2 p.m., and also that it will be done through an electronic means due to the pandemic.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Director Nystrom, second by Director Nelson for approval of moving our meeting to June 25th at 2 p.m. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next up is informational. Marcy is back.
All right, I'll try to keep this brief. I wanted to give an update. We did also go out for bids on our dental, and there's no change in premium. There will be a rate reduction on the administrator of 50 cents, so we should see a savings of approximately $4,200. So just a quick update there.
That was on what?
On our dental
Oh, okay.
plans. And then unfortunately, our trade home sale, the buyers are asking for a cancellation. They had struggled to find contractors, etc. So this week, our realtor, Brad Watson, is going to try to reach out to previous people who had expressed interest. And if he can't get anything, then we'll have to put it up for auction. So stay tuned. I'll either be presenting hopefully another purchase agreement or something for an auction.
Was there earnest money put down on that?
Yes.
Non-refundable?
We are working through that. We have to do a cancellation agreement with that, and they do have to sign that in order be returned, or in order for us to keep it. And then the last part, pay attention now, because this is good news. I'm sure you have heard about the CARES Act. Today, the application came out and more details. So for Brainerd Public Schools, there is Governor's Emergency Education Relief as part of this CARES Act. And for Brainerd, right now, an estimated $85,000. There's a question mark there that actually I just want to make sure I get this right. So Secretary DeVos has indicated she may pursue rulemaking to codify the guidance. So they're saying don't have an escrow of funds that may or may not they need clarification on. So that is the amount that does not need clarification on, is $84,000. And then there is the ESSER funds, which is elementary and secondary school emergency relief. And same thing with that, the amount that we do not need clarification on is an estimated $847,000. And the GER funds can be used for technology or summer school programming. And then the ESSER funds, there's more of an expanded, there's several acts that it can be used for. It can be used in response to the coronavirus. It can be used to address the needs of our school leaders with resources during this time. There's a lot more expanded on that $847,000. So it's very
We're so excited.
exciting.
Is this state or federal?
Federal.
Federal.
These are the federal dollars.
Yep. So we'll be working on
Finally had
applications.
smiles on our faces
Yeah.
being made today when we met.
Exactly. So we'll be working on applications and getting those funds in.
Good job.
Yeah. Good news. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy. Superintendent's report.
Just to update, yeah, it was an exciting, when we found that out from MREA this weekend. And at one time, you know, we had shared that we knew there were these dollars, but we didn't know if the state was going to keep them to help to cover some of the expenses and such from the state, or if they were going to be distributed to school districts. And I know in the meetings I sit in every Wednesday morning, we keep asking, please make sure that schools see some of this money to cover some of the expenses. And so we're really excited about that, because the additional technology that we got, some of the curriculum work that we did and such, this is going to be really helpful as we move forward. Like we said, there are just so many unknowns. So this is really a bright, shiny spot for us. I'm going to keep this really short since this meeting has gone really long tonight. Again, I just want to thank the board and everyone for the beautiful groundbreakings that we had, for the beautiful graduation, for coming and handing out the diplomas again last week. Sue had sent a message that she was the last board member in the course of the day to hand out diplomas, and 323 students came by that day to pick up their diploma, take a picture, and get their T-shirt and stuff. And so, I mean, that's well over half of our graduates. So, that's just really exciting. Also, we'll be getting going with some of this equity work that we promised today to our public. We are going to publish our letter that we did today, because, you know, CLC did a really nice job last week of publishing theirs. I received Bemidji State's today. And so, you know, it's really fun to see so many people making that commitment, because it really is going to take all of us working together to make that change. And so I really do look forward to working as community partners for our kids. With that being said, I think everything else that I have highlighted in here today has been addressed. And once again, just thank you for your work, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Well, it's not quite a 3-hour meeting, so we could take another 6
Do you want me
minutes
to
and
take a
discuss
couple?
something else if anybody has. But if not, let's entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thanks for hanging in there for 3 hours.
Great
Lots of
stuff though tonight. I mean, a lot of important work.